What if I told you that China is so wide it spans the geographic equivalent of 5 separate time zones, but legally insists it is the same time everywhere, meaning the sun rises at 10 a.m. in the west of the country by official clock? Or that somewhere inside China sits a canyon so deep, so remote, and so geologically violent that it makes the Grand Canyon look like a drainage ditch, and almost nobody outside of geology circles has ever heard its name? Welcome to China, a country often seen as an economic superpower and manufacturing giant, but which is actually one of the most geographically extreme, paradoxical, and geologically turbulent places on Earth. A country where rivers flow above the land, where mountains are striped in colors that look computer-generated, where an entire lake the size of a small country simply ceased to exist within a human lifetime. From a plateau that controls the freshwater supply of 2 billion people to a desert that is actively erasing a civilization's history from the map, here are 7 geography facts you never knew about China, and every single one of them will change how you see it. Most people think of China as one coherent geographic unit, one country, one clock, one reality. But if you trace a straight horizontal line across China on a map, from its eastern coast to its westernmost border, something immediately looks wrong. That distance is roughly 5,200 kilometers. For comparison, the continental United States spans about 4,500 kilometers from coast to coast, and America uses 6 separate time zones to account for the movement of the sun across that distance. China spans more, and it uses 1. This is not a geographic accident. It is a political decision made in 1949 when the newly established People's Republic declared that the entire country would operate on Beijing Standard Time. The logic was unity, one nation, one time, one identity. The geographic reality is something else entirely. In Xinjiang, China's westernmost province, the sun does not rise until after 10 a.m. by official clock time in winter. It does not set until what Beijing insists is nearly midnight in summer. The natural day and the official day are running roughly 3 to 4 hours apart from each other. This creates 2 parallel realities operating simultaneously in Western China: the official clock, which governs government offices, train schedules, and formal institutions, and Xinjiang time, an unofficial shadow schedule that locals follow for daily life, set roughly 2 hours behind Beijing. In practice, Xinjiang runs on its own time while legally pretending it doesn't. The sun knows the truth. It rises when it rises regardless of what the clocks say. China doesn't have a geography problem here. It has a geography that its politics refuses to acknowledge. Zoom out from that single political line across the map, and a much larger geographic truth comes into focus. China does not just span time zones. It spans altitudes so extreme that part of its territory functions climatically and hydrologically as an entirely separate planet. The Tibetan Plateau covers approximately 2.5 million square kilometers, an area larger than Western Europe, at an average elevation of over 4,500 meters above sea level. The air pressure there is roughly 60% of what it is at sea level. Unacclimatized visitors lose cognitive function within hours. The plateau is so high, so cold, and so vast that it generates its own weather systems, deflects the jet stream, and fundamentally alters the climate of the entire Asian continent. Scientists do not call it a mountain range. They call it the third pole. That name exists because the Tibetan Plateau holds the largest concentration of glaciers and frozen freshwater outside of the Arctic and Antarctic. Those glaciers are the birthplace of 10 of Asia's most important rivers: the Yangtze, the Yellow River, the Mekong, the Irrawaddy, the Brahmaputra, the Indus, the Ganges, and more. Every one of those rivers flows downhill from this single elevated source and fans out across the continent below, delivering water to an estimated 1.9 billion people, nearly 2 billion people, drinking, farming, and building their entire civilizations downstream from one plateau. The third pole is not a geographic curiosity. It is the water tower that the modern world was built underneath. And if the scale of the Tibetan Plateau challenges your sense of what China is, the thing carved into its eastern edge will break it entirely. Most people, when they think of the world's greatest canyon, think of the Grand Canyon. 446 kilometers long, 1,800 meters deep at its deepest. One of America's most visited natural landmarks. The Yarlung Tsangpo Grand Canyon in southeastern Tibet is deeper. It is longer. It is more geologically violent. And the vast majority of people on Earth have never heard its name. The Yarlung Tsangpo Canyon reaches depths of over 6,000 meters in places, more than 3 times the depth of the Grand Canyon at its deepest point. It was carved by the Yarlung Tsangpo River, which begins on the Tibetan Plateau, and then, at the eastern edge, performs one of the most dramatic descents of any river on Earth. In the space of roughly 250 kilometers, the river drops nearly 3,000 meters in elevation, carving through the Himalayan rock as the Indian and Eurasian tectonic plates continue to grind against each other directly beneath it. The canyon is so steep, so remote, and so geologically active that large sections of it remained completely unexplored by outsiders until the 1990s. Waterfalls were discovered there that scientists had only theorized might exist. Now come down from those impossible elevations and move into the interior of China, into a landscape that looks at first glance like nothing more than a pale, empty plateau. It is easy to underestimate the Loess Plateau of central China. From a distance it looks featureless, eroded, quiet. Look more carefully at the cliff faces and you begin to see doors. The Loess Plateau covers approximately 640,000 square kilometers, an area roughly the size of France. It is covered in a material called loess, fine-grained, pale yellow dust carried by wind from the Gobi Desert over millions of years and deposited in layers up to 300 meters thick in places. Think of it as a slow-motion continental snowfall, except the snow is dust and it has been falling for 3 million years. Humans looked at 300 meters of carvable cliff face and made a decision that still shapes life in this region today. They dug inward. Yao Dong, cave dwellings carved directly into the Loess, have housed human populations in this region for thousands of years. Estimates suggest that at their peak, more than 40 million people in China were living in Loess cave homes. Some still do. The geography did not just provide a landscape, it provided the building material itself free of charge, requiring nothing more than labor and time. Most rivers flow through the land. The Yellow River, in its lower reaches across the North China Plain, flows above it. This is not a metaphor. Stand on the bank of the Yellow River in Henan or Shandong province and look at the surrounding farmland. The river surface is above your head. In some places, the riverbed sits 4 to 10 meters higher than the fields and villages on either side. The river is not in a valley, it is on a ridge. This happened because of the sediment pouring in from the Loess Plateau. As the river slows on the flat plains of eastern China, it drops its sediment load. Over thousands of years, that deposition raised the riverbed. As the bed rose, engineers built levees to contain the water. As the levees were built, the river deposited more sediment against them, raising the bed further. More levees, higher bed, more levees. The cycle has been running for over 2,500 years. In 1887, a single flood killed an estimated 900,000 to 2 million people. Chinese civilization did not develop despite the Yellow River. It developed in permanent negotiation with a river that could erase it at any moment. In Gansu province in northwestern China, the Zhangye Danxia landform looks, in photographs, like something created digitally by someone who had never studied geology. The mountains are striped in deep reds, burnt oranges, pale yellows, and in places a chalky blue-gray. The colors are completely real and entirely natural. Over approximately 24 million years, different mineral-rich sediments were deposited in horizontal layers. Iron oxides produce the reds and oranges. Chlorite minerals produce the greens. Gypsum and carbonates produce the whites and yellows. Then, as the tectonic collision that built the Tibetan Plateau sent shockwaves outward, those flat horizontal layers were tilted, folded, and uplifted. Rain and wind then carved into the exposed edges of those tilted layers, revealing the cross-section of 24 million years of deposition in a single hillside face. What you are looking at when you see Zhangye Danxia is time itself made visible. Each stripe is a chapter. Each color is a different geological era. The mountain is not decorated, it is a record, and it is not finished. It is mid-sentence. In the heart of the Tarim Basin in Xinjiang, there is a place on modern maps marked only as a dry salt flat. But older maps show something very different in that location. A lake, not a small lake. Lop Nur at its historical maximum covered approximately 3,000 square kilometers. By the 1970s, Lop Nur had disappeared entirely. The immediate cause was human. Upstream damming and agricultural diversion eliminated the river water that fed it. The lake did not shrink gradually. It crossed a threshold and vanished. Within a decade of losing its primary water source, one of the largest lakes in Asia became a salt flat used for nuclear weapons testing. A 3,000 square kilometer lake, gone within a human lifetime. Lop Nur is the most extreme demonstration in China of a truth that runs through every fact in this video. The margin between stability and catastrophe is smaller than it looks from the outside. China isn't a country with extreme geography. It is a country that extreme geography built. The single time zone that papers over a 4-hour solar reality. The plateau that holds the water supply of 2 billion people and is quietly melting. The canyon that the world's most famous canyon cannot match but the world has never heard of. The plateau of dust that housed tens of millions inside its cliffs. The river that flows above the heads of the people who depend on it. The mountains painted by 24 million years of slow geological patience. The lake that the modern world erased in a decade. None of these are separate stories. They are the same story told in different registers. What China's geography does next will shape the lives of billions of people who have never looked at a map of it. Thanks for joining me today. If you want to see more videos like this, please consider subscribing and turn on notifications. It really does make a difference. Thanks again, and I'll see you next time on WGeo.